It was supposed to be a quiet birthday dinner, just family, nothing dramatic. But the moment I stepped into my father's backyard in Dallas that early spring evening, I knew something was off. Fairy lights hung across the pergola like a wedding reception. A long, white-draped table sat in the middle of the yard, flanked by gold-rimmed wine glasses and catered platters that looked straight off a magazine cover. This wasn't just a family dinner. It was something else. My father stood near the grill, dressed like he was hosting a charity gala. His wife, Ellen, gave me the kind of tight-lipped smile people give when they're tolerating a stray dog. Elaine, my older sister, waved from across the yard, her hand resting on the arm of her fiancé, Sterling. He looked like he'd stepped out of a courtroom drama. Perfect hair, navy suit, Rolex glinting even in the fading sunlight. Everyone was looking at him. Not me. Elaine handed me a gift bag. Fancy, sure, but I recognized the pen set before I even pulled it out. I'd given it to her 3 years ago when she graduated. The little engraved plate with her initials was still on it. No one noticed, or cared. I sat, smiled, nodded through small talk, but my ears pricked when I overheard Dad whisper to Uncle Mark, "Well, tonight's more about Sterling anyway. It's not every day your future son-in-law gets the nod from the DA's office." That was it. That was the whole thing. This night wasn't about me. I clenched my jaw, let my smile do the talking. I'd learned to swallow these things early, but that sting, it never got easier. Dinner passed in a blur. Roast beef, rosemary potatoes, laughter that felt staged. I tried to engage, make conversation, but I was background noise to Sterling's highlight reel. Internships, accolades, campaign offers. Every sentence was another nail in the coffin of who my family wished I was. Then Dad stood up, wine glass in hand. He tapped a spoon against the rim. "A quick toast," he said, grinning. I straightened in my seat. "I just want to say how proud we are of this young man right here. Sterling," Dad said, gesturing across the table. "He's everything a father could hope for his daughter. Smart, accomplished, respectful, the kind of man who makes a family better." The table nodded along. He turned to me, still smiling. "Jace, honestly, you're not even 1/10 of your sister's fiancé. But hey, we still love you, son." Laughter. Tight, awkward laughter. Aunt May looked at her wine. Abby blinked, mouth open. Elaine smirked. Sterling didn't flinch. He was used to applause. I felt something inside me give way. It was like my body knew before my mind did. The air turned stale. My fingers dug into the tablecloth. I heard my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. 10 years ago, I turned down a full scholarship to stay home and help Dad recover from hip surgery. I worked double shifts to cover the mortgage when he lost his job. All of it. Invisible now. He couldn't even pretend to care. The silence after the toast was quick. Conversation resumed. Wine refilled. Then the waiter brought out the cake. 3-tiered. Blue frosting piped across the top. "Happy birthday, Jace." Dad laughed. "Well, at least the cake's worth celebrating, right?" Something in me snapped. I stood up slowly. My chair scraped against the stone tiles. Heads turned. I looked at the cake. It was ridiculous. Loud. Oversized. Like everything else tonight, it wasn't for me. It was for show. Without a word, I grabbed the cake stand and pushed. It slid off the table, dropped to the lawn with a loud thud. Frosting splattered across the grass, thick and sickly sweet. The center tier cracked in half. Gasps all around. Ellen shouted, "What the hell is wrong with you?" Sterling stood, bracing as if I might swing. Elaine clutched his arm. Dad's face went pale. I didn't say a thing, didn't yell, didn't defend myself. I just walked. Out the gate, past the pool, onto the street. My chest tight, my hands trembling, but not from regret. That night, something in me ended, but something else, something long buried. Finally, began to breathe again. I drove without a destination, just needed space. I pulled into a parking lot near the old baseball field, engine off, head against the steering wheel. Silence. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy kind. The kind that feels like it's pressing down on your ribs. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You were right to walk away. You don't know the half of what they're hiding." I stared at the screen, breath caught mid-throat. Who was this? And what were they hiding? The city was quiet when I pulled into the lot outside my apartment complex. I sat there for a while, engine off, watching the distant glow of porch lights and traffic signals bleeding through the misted windshield. The message still sat on my screen, the words burning brighter than the screen itself. You were right to walk away. You don't know the half of what they're hiding. Back upstairs, I pushed the door open and stepped into the low hum of silence. The place smelled like dust and cardboard. I had been planning to move out for months, get away from the noise, from the past, but life had a way of stalling you mid-decision. Boxes lined the hallway, some half-packed, others just sitting open with no direction. I kicked off my shoes and stood in the kitchen. No music, no TV, just the hum of the fridge and my own thoughts circling like vultures. I poured a glass of water and leaned against the counter. The night had been brutal, but this message was something different. And it wasn't rage, it wasn't sadness, it was curiosity, laced with a quiet kind of fear. My phone buzzed again. Same number. It started with your grandfather's will. Sterling's family pulled strings. Follow the money. I didn't sit. I started pacing. One hand still gripping the phone, the other running through my hair. My grandfather. He'd passed when I was 24. We were close, or I thought we were. The kind of close where a man tells you to your face, you've got the spine this family lacks. I used to mow his lawn every Saturday, fixed his gutters, drove him to VA checkups when no one else offered. He once said, "The land's yours one day, Jace. You earn it every weekend." I hadn't thought about that land in years. It was just a big empty plot near the lake. Nothing fancy, but it mattered to him, and he made sure it mattered to me. I crossed the room, opened a box I hadn't touched in years. Sharpie on the side read, "Dad's old files." Inside, a mess. Receipts, birthday cards, faded photos, and near the bottom, a sealed envelope. Thick, heavy. It was addressed to Dad, postmarked from a trust company. 6 months ago. I hesitated for a beat, then tore it open. Inside was a summary of a property reassignment. The land, Grandpa's land, was now in the name of the Coltons, Sterling's family. I sat down hard, the envelope slipping from my fingers. I started pulling up real estate transfers on my laptop, county records, legal notices. One name popped up again and again, Richard Colton, Sterling's uncle, a real estate attorney with ties to probate court. Of course, the transfer had gone through quietly. No press, no announcement, just a line item buried in the county records, like it had always been theirs. I stared at the screen. My chest tightened. Not because of the money. That land wasn't worth much in cash, but it was the principle. It was what it meant, that I could be erased so easily. That a promise from a dying man could be rewritten like bad history, and no one told me. That's what burned. I leaned back and let it all come crashing in. I remembered Elaine's 17th birthday. Balloons, DJ, a new car with a giant red bow in the driveway, 100 guests packed into the backyard, catered food, champagne for the adults. My 17th, Dad had been too busy. I had a microwaved lasagna and a card left on the counter. No one sang, no one showed. I'd told myself for years that it was just timing, that people forget things, that being strong meant not needing the fuss. But sitting there, staring at a document that buried me in ink, it hit me. When someone keeps disappearing from your life, you stop calling it abandonment. You call it character. That's how I'd survived. Now it just felt like denial dressed in loyalty. My phone rang. Unknown number. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. The voice was low, steady. Could have been anyone. Young, old, it didn't matter. It was what they said that made my blood chill. You're asking the right questions, but be careful who you trust next. 2 days had passed since the birthday dinner, since the cake, since the message, since the voice on the line told me to watch my back. I hadn't slept well since. My apartment felt like a stranger's space, sterile, scattered, and silent. Morning light broke through the blinds, but it didn't warm anything. I got out of bed with a knot in my stomach, the words echoing in my head. Be careful who you trust. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I drove through downtown Dallas with the windows cracked, the cool breeze doing nothing to settle me. I parked a few blocks from the courthouse and walked in like a man looking for an answer he didn't want to find. I told the clerk I was doing family genealogy research. I didn't want to give her a reason to raise her eyebrows. She showed me to a terminal. I searched my grandfather's name, eyes scanning the screen until something clicked. There it was. The original will. Scanned, dated, filed. I pulled it up and read it slowly. My heart stopped at the line. The primary land shall go to my grandson, Jace. Me, plain as day. The document was dated 3 months before the version I had found in my father's file. The one that conveniently left me out. I took photos of every page, every signature, every detail. My hands weren't shaking, but inside I was rattling. Back in the car, I opened the envelope again, the one from my father's files. I laid the photos side by side with the scan from the courthouse on my phone. Something didn't sit right. The signature, it looked rushed, and the notary stamp on the newer version, wrong font, slightly tilted, almost printed. I needed a second opinion. I called Amanda, a friend from college. We hadn't talked much in years, but I knew she worked as a paralegal now. She owed me a favor. I met her at her office downtown, tucked inside a law firm that smelled like burnt coffee and printer ink. Amanda scanned the pages. Her eyes narrowed. "This second version, it's off," she said, tapping the signature. "I've seen too many of these to miss it. This isn't the same hand. The notary stamp's been digitally inserted too. I'd bet on it." I looked at her. She didn't flinch. "If this gets challenged," she added, "it could unravel the entire estate, every asset, every decision. But Jace, this means war." "Yeah," I said quietly. "I figured." She hesitated. "You sure you want to go down this road?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because when someone erases your name from your own bloodline story, the road becomes the only thing left. I thanked Amanda and offered to buy her coffee. We headed to a nearby cafe. Low lights, local art on the walls, 2 baristas who barely looked up when we walked in. We grabbed a booth in the back, next to the windows. I was going over notes on a napkin, thinking through timelines, when Amanda leaned in and whispered, "Don't look now, but someone's watching us." I glanced casually. Corner booth, hoodie, blonde hair tucked under a cap. Abby. She saw me notice, stood up slowly and walked over. She looked older than I remembered, maybe just tired. Her voice was low when she spoke. "I shouldn't be here," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "But I need to tell you something." She slid into the booth across from me, her fingers fidgeting with a napkin. I waited. "A few months ago," she began, "Elaine asked me to help her pack for a conference. I found a folder, legal stuff, sealed, but not locked. I peeked. It didn't make sense." "What did it say?" "It was a will, but it looked different, like it had been printed over something older. I was told not to ask. Sterling caught me looking and said, 'It's all taken care of. Don't poke around.' After the funeral, I heard him on the phone. And he said, 'Nee, don't worry. The will's taken care of. It's cleaner this way.'" Her voice cracked at the edges. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" "Because they'd ruin me," she said. "You don't understand, Jace. Elaine knows people. Sterling has friends in courtrooms. My job, my apartment, everything. Gone, just like that." I leaned back, stunned. Not because I didn't believe her, but because it matched everything I feared. She glanced around, then reached into her coat pocket. "Before I left that night, I copied something." She slid a USB drive under my coffee cup. "I don't know what all's on it, but it's something. Just, if you open it, be sure. Because once you do, there's no going back." I drove home just after sunset. Familiar streets, same potholes, but everything felt different. My hands were tight on the wheel. The USB Abby gave me sat on the passenger seat, wrapped in a napkin like it was radioactive. I didn't plug it in, not yet. My apartment was a wreck. Not from clutter, but from neglect. The same dishes from 2 days ago were still in the sink, clothes draped over the couch, mail unopened. I dropped my keys and stood in the dark, not bothering with lights. My voicemail blinked. "Dad." "Hey, call me when you can. We should talk." I let it sit. Talking had never brought anything but disappointment. Sleep didn't come. I brewed coffee close to midnight, sat at the kitchen table. Silence draped over everything like plastic. I caught myself replaying Dad's toast, Elaine's smirk, the clink of wine glasses after that cheap little speech. The memory kept looping. Same insult, same reaction, different angles. No matter how I replayed it, I still felt small in their story. The next day, I made a choice. Not out of peace, but clarity. I drove over to Elaine's place around 3. Not a phone call, not a warning. I showed up. She answered the door with a fake smile. "Oh, Jace." Her tone had no warmth. Sterling appeared behind her, still in his buttoned-up lawyer drag. Sleeves rolled, but everything else too polished to be casual. "You here to make peace?" he asked, as if the last few days were some harmless misunderstanding. I didn't answer. Just walked in. A few relatives were seated in the backyard again. Not a party this time, but the same circle of faces. Low chatter, coffee mugs in hand. I sat at the table without invitation. Set a printed photo down in front of Elaine. The cake, smeared, collapsed. I didn't need to say much. "You said I wasn't 1/10 the man he is," I said, looking at Sterling. "But this photo, this proves I still feel that I reacted." You all laughed, but not one of you asked why. Elaine's smile cracked. Sterling blinked like he'd been slapped. I wasn't yelling, just steady, the kind of calm that makes people uncomfortable. Murmurs drifted across the yard. Someone coughed, another sipped their drink and glanced away. Then Abby appeared, walking through the side gate. Her cheeks flushed, breath uneven. She carried something in her hands, a weathered journal. "Jace," she said, voice shaking, "I brought it. I need you to have this." She handed me the book and sat down beside me, her eyes locked on Elaine like she was about to vomit. "I found it while going through Grandpa's attic," she said. "I wasn't supposed to touch anything, but I did. It has notes, dates, names, even his doubts about who to trust." Elaine opened her mouth, then shut it. Abby continued, her voice more steady now. "2 days after the funeral, I heard Sterling on the phone. He said, 'Don't worry. The will's taken care of.' I thought it was about logistics. But now," she looked down, "now I know what he meant." I didn't move, didn't blink. Everything inside me was a storm, but I kept my posture still. Truth lands quieter when it's not shouted. After a long pause, I stood, took the journal, nodded at Abby, and walked out. By the time I reached my apartment, it was almost dark again. I dropped the journal on the table, poured a glass of water, and sat. Didn't speak, didn't even sigh. The pages felt heavier than they looked. Notes in Grandpa's handwriting, small, cramped, but deliberate. I read until the words blurred. Then I reached for a blank sheet, drew a line down the middle. On one side, people. On the other, documents. I began listing: Elaine, Sterling, trust firm, signatures, bank accounts, property transfers. Abby's words echoed as I wrote. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. And maybe, finally, a piece of dignity they hadn't handed me like a favor. A quote surfaced from somewhere. I didn't know who said it first, but I whispered it to myself. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet voice at the end of the day that says, "I will try again tomorrow." I had one more name to write when my phone buzzed. A photo. No caption. It was a close-up of a property deed. My grandfather's signature at the bottom, but the name typed above it. Elaine. Stamped, filed, silent. The photo had been taken at an angle, someone hiding. I didn't know who sent it, but I knew one thing. I wasn't crazy, and I wasn't done. I woke up before sunrise. Felt like the sky was holding its breath. I stared at the ceiling until the light bled in through the window blinds. The USB from Abby lay on my desk, untouched overnight, my mind too tangled to open it. I made coffee, strong and black, and sat by the window watching rain smear the streetlights. Nothing had changed outside, but inside I felt a crack. Betrayal had moved from rumor to fact. I finally plugged the USB into my laptop. Files, emails, legal documents, audio files appeared. My heart skipped when I heard Sterling's voice. While Jace is out of town, shift the property. It'll be clean. I paused the clip, pressed replay, and noted the date. Then an email between Elaine and a lawyer about beneficiary change pending surfaced. There was another file, bank statements, tax records, tying transfers to Sterling's uncle. I screen-recorded backup copies, uploaded to cloud storage, external drive. I leaned back, fists unclenched, realizing this was more than favoritism. This was theft, calculated, deliberate, hidden. I called Amanda. It's not just lies anymore. They stole from Grandpa and from me. Later that afternoon, I texted Elaine and Sterling. We need to talk. One last time, face to face. They agreed. We met at the downtown cafe, crowded, noisy, a place people pretend privacy. Sterling offered a small grin. Elaine's eyes flickered. I placed 3 photos on the table, the original will, the altered deed, and an audio confession. I didn't shout. I said, I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to warn you. If this goes legal, it gets ugly. I saw Sterling's jaw twitch, Elaine's voice ready to lie. She said, that land wouldn't have helped you anyway. You're not a builder, you're a writer. I held her gaze. Funny thing about writers, we know how to document everything. Heads turned. Someone near us dropped a spoon. Silence stretched. That night I found my car scratched, deep gouges along the passenger door. I stared at the red under the silver metal. I got an anonymous voicemail. Back off or you'll regret it. My gut didn't twist. My resolve stiffened. I called Amanda again. They're escalating. She said she'd contact her firm's forensic accounting team. We needed someone on the inside. Around midnight, Dad showed up at my apartment. No knock, just standing outside, tired. He didn't raise his voice. I never wanted this for you. You don't know the whole picture. I didn't soften. Then tell me, I said, because all I see is betrayal. He sighed, shuffling. I let them convince me you'd be fine without that land, that you were strong enough. I thought you didn't need help. My voice stayed calm. You called my independence a reason to discard me. I called it survival. Morning came. I decided to show Amanda what I had. I plugged the USB back in, and nothing. Empty folders. Files corrupted. The truth, or at least the evidence, vanished. In that still apartment, I stood, blinking at the blank screen. Who got to it? Who knew where it was? And had I already lost the war without even firing a shot? I sat at my desk, laptop open, document untitled. The cursor blinked against a white screen, mocking me. I named it Evidence Timeline. My breath felt heavy in my chest. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and clicked open the recovered files from the USB, the ones I'd saved before it wiped. Sterling's voice again. Elaine's emails. Cold, rehearsed, deliberate. Nothing accidental here. I backed everything up. Encrypted folders, multiple drives. One stored offline, one on a hard drive in my safe. I'd learned my lesson. Digital trails vanish too easily. As I stared at the folder, a text popped up on my screen from Amanda. Check the documents. S11 is real. Signature doesn't match the notary stamp on the altered deed. My jaw tensed. So I hadn't been chasing ghosts. My silence wasn't weakness, it was building force, a different kind of war. I looked over at the photo of the birthday cake, smashed, off-centered, still taped to the fridge. That moment, that night, felt like the first crack in a wall that had always looked solid. I never expected that mess would become the spark. Amanda called again an hour later. Come to the office, Big Day, she said. Yeah, you need to hear this in person. I got there around 5. Her office was small but clean, smelled faintly like lemon and toner. She introduced me to a man in his 60s. Sharp, gray beard, wireframe glasses, forensic document examiner. He held up the altered deed, an original will. That newer one, he said. Fake, no question. Fonts are mismatched, signature traced. Notary stamp used on 2 other documents the same day, 50 miles apart. I let the words wash over me. Not shock, not even anger anymore. Just a cold, simple knowing. Amanda turned to me. This will hold up in court, but be ready. They won't fold. And your father, he might not stand with you. I nodded. No illusions left there. My phone buzzed. Unusual login attempt on your cloud account. I clicked for details. An IP from Oklahoma. I hadn't left Texas. They were watching me, or trying to. That night, my father called. Said he was outside. I didn't ask why. I buzzed him in. He looked like he hadn't slept. If you go through with this, he said, you'll break this family. I leaned against the doorframe. It's already broken. He kept going, softer. You remember when you dropped out of your first job? You said you didn't need help. You were wrong then. You might be wrong now. I nodded once. Maybe. But I'd rather be wrong fighting than be quiet for lies. He didn't argue. Later, around 10, my mother knocked on my door. She didn't wait to be let in, just stepped through and sat down. Her hands trembled. Elaine oversaw all of it. I didn't know how deep it went, but I saw papers. Years ago. She looked up. Silence seemed safer. That broke me more than anything. I crouched down in front of her. Mom, I'm not here to destroy, but I can't protect lies anymore. She started to cry, but didn't stop me when I stood and gathered the disk. I emailed the final backup files to Amanda, and then I added one more recipient, a local journalist I knew from college. No explanation, just the truth. Seconds later, I heard a knock. I expected quiet. Instead, it was Sterling, breath ragged, eyes wide. He didn't even speak at first, just held out his phone. A photo was already going viral. Grandpa's deed. My name highlighted. My grandfather's signature beside it. Sterling's voice broke. Someone posted it. Your name is all over this. My hands didn't shake. I didn't blink. But inside, I felt the earth shift. I hadn't leaked it. And now the whole world knew something the family had tried to bury. I woke up to my phone lighting up before dawn. Missed calls, messages, screenshots. My neighbor's post, Justice for Jace. Not just family gossip, but front-page headlines on local news sites. My name, Grandpa's deed, Elaine's version of everything everywhere. It felt like I was no longer invisible, vindicated, and strangely vulnerable. I saw the new family slideshow Elaine posted online. Every photo but one had me cropped out, blurred, or removed. The caption, siblings drift apart, it happens. Like losing someone means you never existed. I swallowed anger, contacted Amanda. She pulled archived versions, screened them side by side. The original photo, me, the three of us, smiling, was clear proof. The edited one was a knife. I sent both versions to media friends. I watched comments flood in. Some sympathetic, some cruel. But all paying attention. My mother spoke to a reporter later. Live interview. I never meant to harm Jace. I tried to protect our family name. Her words cracked her voice. To some, it sounded genuine. To me, it sounded like late-stage damage control, protection, or participation. I realized silence had been her fence all along, and she'd helped build it. I sat alone that afternoon, breathing in betrayal and shame. The emotional weight pressed down, but I refused to let it break me. Then the proof arrived, final. I got back original will documents that were notarized properly, Grandpa's handwriting, all those legal filings. Everything that said I was primary heir. At the courthouse, the filings were now official. Elaine's claim was legally challenged. Sterling's spokesperson spun stories. Dad stayed quiet in public, but behind closed doors, lips moved. Amanda said we could file for restitution or transfer. I nodded. I had crossed the line from speaking truth to demanding it. Court date came. Reporters crowding the steps, cameras flashing. In the gallery, I sat with my lawyer. The judge cleared his throat. Elaine sat opposite, stiff in a backup plan costume. Expensive jacket, forced composure. My heart pounded. All the months of hiding evidence, late nights, secrecy, it led to this. I stood, presented documents, the original will, the photos, the audio confession. I spoke not with rage, but with clear purpose. I said, I lost nothing by telling the truth. I only lost when I hid it. The room trembled. Silence fell. The courthouse steps felt different that morning. There was a kind of electricity in the air, nerves, sweat, quiet judgment from strangers with cameras. I arrived early, wearing the same suit I wore to Grandpa's funeral. Only this time, I was showing up to bury something else. The lies. Amanda met me just inside the entry, gripping a thick folder. Her voice was low but firm. They can't spin this anymore. You've got everything. I nodded, but my stomach was a knot of concrete. Elaine entered next, Sterling behind her. They were flanked by handlers, hair perfectly in place, expressions rehearsed. But their eyes kept darting, scanning, not control. Fear. My father didn't even look at me, just passed by like we were strangers. Mom stood off to the side near Elaine, arms crossed, lips thin, face unreadable. But her eyes, they were bracing. Bracing for something to crack. Midway through the hearing, that crack came. Mom was called to the stand. For a moment, she looked like she might faint. Then she sat, pulled the mic closer, and began to speak. Her voice trembled. Not the fake kind, but the kind that spills out when the truth presses too hard. I saw the deed, she said. I didn't know what to do. I thought, maybe Grandpa was confused. That's what they told me. She paused. But I knew something was wrong. Elaine's neck stiffened like she'd been jabbed. Sterling avoided looking at anyone. You could hear the pens of reporters scraping one after another. I didn't feel joy, not exactly, but I felt something settle inside me, like a wound finally getting air. Then the courtroom shifted. Someone from the back passed a phone to the bailiff, who delivered it to the judge. Within minutes, the courtroom's monitor displayed a grainy video. Sterling, sitting in a bar, laughing with some buddy. Once the new deed's in the system, Jace won't see a dime. The room gasped. Elaine turned toward him slowly, stunned. He blinked, realizing he'd just lit the match that could burn them both down. The judge called for silence. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. It was time. I stood up when the judge signaled. I walked to the front, placed my evidence, hard copy of the will, notary seal clear as day, side-by-side photos, and the video clip on USB. My voice was steady. I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here for justice, for truth, and for what was always mine. Elaine opened her mouth, but the judge cut her off. Sit down. Sterling's lawyers flipped papers, whispered fast. It was too late. When the gavel dropped, it echoed, not loud, but final. Outside, the porch buzzed with whispers, phones held up, neighbors watching. I didn't flinch. I walked right past them, down the steps, onto the driveway where it all began. Then my phone buzzed. A tweet. Dallas court rules, original will valid, Elaine must vacate title. I stared at the headline. And then the one just below it. Elaine files countersuit, claims forged video, demands settlement. So they're not done. Not yet, but neither am I. The cabin sat like it always had. Quiet, plain, wrapped in trees that never asked questions. It hadn't changed, but I had. I arrived 2 months after the final ruling. No press, no drama, just me in the air. This place had been Grandpa's escape, and now it was mine. I didn't come to hide. I came to breathe. There were no voices here, no lawyers, no arguments echoing down the halls. Just wind through pine, the crunch of gravel under boots, and the lake, still like glass. I'd walk the same trail every morning, down past the boathouse where I'd once caught my first fish. Funny how those memories felt more real than the courtroom ever did. I started journaling again. Not the way I used to, pages filled with anger, disappointment, names scribbled hard into paper. No. Now it was simple things. Mornings. Birds I couldn't name. A dream I had where I forgave Elaine but never told her. It didn't feel like surrender. It felt like stepping out from under a weight that wasn't mine. One afternoon, I sat by the water and asked myself the only question that mattered now. What do I do with all this truth? Because truth is heavy, and once you carry it, you either build something or let it crush you. So I started building. I pulled out Grandpa's old notebooks, plans for the literacy drive he'd dreamed of restarting, garden blueprints for the community, plots that were never finished. I made calls. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years answered. Some had been waiting, just waiting for me to reach back. I said no to every interview. Declined every book agent, every talk show that promised a platform. What they didn't get was that this story wasn't for sale. I wasn't interested in being a symbol or a spectacle. I just wanted my life back. And now I had it. The family name still carried its bruises, but it no longer owned me. Then came the letter. It was handwritten. No return address. Just Mom at the bottom. She didn't ask for forgiveness, just understanding. Said she couldn't undo what was done, that she hoped someday I'd see why she stayed silent, why she let it all happen. I didn't cry, I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in Grandpa's old cigar box. Beside the court ruling, a photo of us fishing, and the first letter he ever wrote me as a kid. That night, I sat by the fire pit, the stars high and cold above me, and I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't clinging. I wasn't angry. I was done, and I was okay. I made a list before I left, just for myself. No titles, no headings, just lines. Pride can look like strength, but sometimes it's just armor. Silence isn't always peace. Love without truth is just control. Family can betray you, but it doesn't define you. Rebuilding doesn't have to be loud. Grandpa once told me, character isn't how loud you win, it's how quiet you rebuild. I never really understood it until now. So I'll say this. For anyone listening who's been lied to, written off, or betrayed by their own blood, you don't need them to see you. You don't need them to say sorry. You don't need them to believe in you. Believe in yourself. That's enough to start again. On my last day at the cabin, I took one picture, just the lake, just for me. Then I deleted everything else off my phone, the emails, the texts, the photos that used to remind me who I was fighting. I didn't need them anymore. I got in the truck, didn't punch in a destination, just a direction. The road ahead was long, but it was mine.